Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Para Brahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. That divine force that creates us, that sustains us, and will ultimately dissolve everything. That divine force, which is our guide, which is the supreme manifestation of reality, to that I bow, to that I bow, to that I bow. So we welcome the universal presence of the soul here. And what better way to do that by kicking off the episode 1, the start of our series, where we're going to be going deep into Swamiji's book itself. Before I get into that, just a little bit of housekeeping. Where are we at? We've kind of recovered well now after the 4 Yogas retreat. It was an absolute hit. Lovely group left us a week ago, so please send some blessing their way. It's great to see a couple of those people joining in, but they're on their 45 days of very critical sadhana post-retreat. So beautiful that offering as well, the 4 yogas, is really consolidated in our own minds and at the ashram. I think that's the 3rd installment of the 4 yogas. So I think it just keeps getting better. For those who have been on the soul retreat, 4 yogas is definitely a great next step, really, all the elements, which is coming up later in the year. Our next retreat is in May. That's fully booked, and that's a soul retreat. We do have some availability in August. So if you are wanting to come on the soul retreat in August, I'd be getting in sooner rather than later. We will be advertising that soon. Similarly, beautiful way for you to introduce the ashram to friends or family if that's something that anyone's popped into your mind. It feels like forever since I have done a Tuesday night session. We went for a few years there where we were pretty consistent, but took the foot off the accelerator a little bit about 6 months ago, and have just been really trying to find a little bit of structure for how we share and to take people who are interested in a little bit of a journey upstream through the source of obviously mine and Raya's inspiration and blessing for the ashram. So Swami Shivkrupanand, this is, for those who haven't seen his smiling face, very radiant, beautiful photo of him there. Many will be familiar with the icon here. The icon, it's a gateway into the subtle realm. It is an abstracted guru element, the Guru Tattva, which is indeed the name of his organization in India, the Guru element. And that's what flows through the subtle body picture. It's not about him as an individual. It is about the universal principle of guidance back towards the soul, towards the supreme. And so many people will find, like you can use him as a gateway to access higher consciousness, or as we do on our retreats, we invite people to connect to Jesus if they're a Christian, or Buddha if they're a Buddhist. Here, we're actually going to go into the human being side of Swamiji and his actual journey to the Himalaya, without which Raya and I wouldn't be running an ashram, without which I'd probably still be in the army in some way, shape or form. Without his journey, God only knows where I myself would be. So the beautiful thing, the beneficial thing of seeing his humanity and understanding a little bit more of his journey, it grounds, as we share on the 4 Yogas retreat when we teach people about Bhakti Yoga, which is a yoga of devotion, worship. What it does to connect to a saint is it draws down that heavenly divine vibration into a human being, and that gives us a stepping stone towards manifesting our own divinity. The great quote that we share on the 4 Yogas is from Swami Vivekananda, each soul is potentially divine. The goal of this life is to manifest that divinity. So the goal of the spiritual path is to bring alive the spirit through flesh, not to kind of use all of this life's energy and just dissolve off into a samadhi or a trance-like state. You can certainly do that. But what you'll find after you do go into some of those states is that you'll come back. You'll still be in the body insofar as there's karma here. So if you're going to be here, then, what are optimal ways of being here? Well, we know what suboptimal ways of being are. I gave the partying and drinking every night of the week thing a nudge for a good few years there. And, it is a suboptimal routine that didn't inspire the best in me and brought out the worst. So this is where the spiritual practices, not to use them as an escape, but to use them as methodologies to ground our spirituality in our life. And that way it kind of oozes and permeates out of our pore all the time. If we achieve that in a sort of 100% just constantly exuding that beautiful vibration, maybe others will perceive us as a saint, or maybe just a little bit less of a jerk than we were before. That's a good step in the right direction. But if you exude that awesome vibration of your soul everywhere, be it at work, worship, meditation, service, what happens to us? We live a life of peace. We live a life that is free from the cycle of karma, free from the cycle of births and deaths. So this is to be liberated whilst living, not to wait until liberation as a final death and a release into God, but to be liberated whilst living. And that is the ultimate, they call that jivan mukti. So it's the ultimate goal of any aspirant on the path. So when you have access to the words that have come from somebody who ostensibly is jivan mukti, then that is a really, really valuable thing. Not least because it creates a sense of believability that freedom whilst living is possible for us. Swami Shivkrupanand has 2 hands and 2 feet, 2 eyes, a nose and a mouth. Like, we have the same appendages and apparatus in the body. When we put our attention, though, on the bodily aspects of a guru or a saint, we can diminish them. When we put our attention on the profound realization or wisdom flowing from that saint or flowing through that saint, we can then nourish and sustain ourselves. And so the trick of the bhakti yoga path is elevating the guru so that we can receive all of that divine consciousness. Now, if you imagine it's water, water doesn't flow uphill, it flows downhill. It has a nature. When you hold up high the sacred, it flows down into you, and then you yourself live a manifestly divine life, which is good for you, good for your friends, good for everybody. You're a better person. You're a light unto others. So Swami Shivkrupanand wrote his biography, began writing it in, I think it was 2007 or thereabouts, and he describes, I read a description, I'll have to track down the article, of him describing the process of actually writing this first book. It was quite an ordeal. So he went on a sort of 16-year long journey, apprenticed under various different gurus in the Himalaya, doing various different sadhana, and it was quite the journey. After you've read all 6 books, you'll pick up that it was full of some pretty out there experiences, deep jungles, Assam region, northeast India, like very, very remote, very tribal, very, very backcountry places. So he went through this quite ferocious journey, and then got his area of work in India, and then began disseminating the teachings set up an ashram in north of Mumbai, 6-7 hours north of Mumbai, in an area, Navsari. Dandi is the first ashram that he set up. And it was after that, after actually establishing quite, or having quite a few followers and sharing meditation with a lot of people, only then did he get the internal guidance to write his biography. And he describes of having to take himself into a very, very high state to be able to put it all down. And even if you yourself have gone through any reflective activities, when we put our attention on something, we create a two-way energetic bridge between us and that thing. So if you're putting your attention on all of the profound realizations and experiences that he had and all of the gurus that he had been with whilst he was in the mountains, you can imagine that there was a huge amount of energy from those experiences that he was reliving and putting into the word. Swamiji is self-described, not a scholar. He never went down a formalized scholarly spiritual path. He apprenticed himself and really bowed in deep surrender to the gurus that had come before him, and he just documents that. So it is a very, very accessible way to read the life of a saint. Keep in the back of your mind that the call, the goal, the wish is not to continue to put Swamiji up and sit there and go, he is the be-all and end-all. The goal is for us ourselves to be full of that divine consciousness. And so by treating the book with respect, he talks about it and his wife talks about it in the opening section, treating the book with respect because of the fact that it's not a novel and it's not an intellectual piece, it's a raw spiritual journey. There's a huge amount of energy that one can experience simply by having their attention through the book. And Raya and I have read through them several times and found each time we go through that it hits us different. And as I went through the allotted reading for this week, I was like, we decided to pause at a natural kind of break in the book, and it was like 14 pages, and I'm like, man, there's a lot in this. This is 14 pages in. If you stop to actually absorb and really digest some of the ideas that he's talking about, like there's a lot in that. I could sit on the first 14 pages for probably the next 14 years, I think. So this is a new style of sharing for Raya and myself. I am, you'll have to be patient with me. So, I haven't necessarily taught in this manner, as in having read and then gone forth and tried to expand or share my reflections on a reading. So we'll catch our flow as we move through the book. I am recording these, so if you do miss a week, you will be able to catch up. Not sure if we'll publish it, just to those who ask for it. Obviously, my honest take on this is that gathering and being present whilst we're talking about it is something very beneficial. I will. If you do have questions, I think the protocol, rather than me trying to keep an eye out on the chat box, which gets a bit confusing, breaks my flow, what we'll do is email those questions in advance, and then we can speak to those questions about specific things. So without further ado, I'm just going to go through, I scribbled a few notes as I read through about some really some of the bits that hit me, and perhaps as I reflect on these, you can digest and get another bite at it. If you haven't had time to read it, don't feel bad. You've got the opportunity. I think Raya has shared them on the group, so you can just reflect on that over the coming week and see what it brings you. So first of all, he's on a journey to an unknown destination. So it opens with him and Sri Brahmanand Swami. the bliss of the creator. You know, that's the Brahmanand. So he is following a guru to an unknown destination. The guide is certain and he is uncertain. That's what makes a guide a guide. The guide knows the destination that they're taking somebody to. When we're in a position of being the guided, the trust that we have in the guru or the guide will determine what upon the journey. It won't actually determine our safety upon the journey. It will determine our own inner state on the journey. So Swamiji also talks in the opening that the fear that he had is due to his own impurities, the impurities of his own mind. What is a practice that, for those who did the 4 Yogas retreat, that creates purity of mind? It is the selfless service of others that creates purity inside of our mind. How does Swamiji himself in this situation purify his mind? He has full faith and surrender in his guru. So this is where the guru charan that he refers to are the guru's feet. And in many different yogic meditative traditions, the guru's feet is given as a place upon which a disciple or a devotee will surrender. Why is that? You know, Swamiji has shared that the consciousness emanates from the guru's feet. There's also a sense of placing ourself or our body lower when we bow down at the feet of another. You know, it's a really ego. It's not gratifying to the ego, to say the least. What does it do when we pull the ego down a little bit? It gives us a connection to the soul. So, you know, he uses the word in there, the sun of truth, which really kind of hit me. The one truth, the one sun, the one source of light that shines its grace upon saint and sinner. So, you know, there's the nature analogies or the areas of nature that Swamiji is directing our attention to as he's writing. You know, they carry different energies, and for those that have been on the soul retreat, you'll know that the Gayatri mantra, the deity is the sun, and so one translation of the Gayatri mantra is, may that light illumine our intellect, may we be full of that light. So simply by Swamiji bringing our attention to not just the sun, but the sun, the truthful sun, the light that illumines the truth of the mess inside of the mind body, you know, that as our attention goes on to these things, we purify our awareness simply just by having our attention on beautiful, great things. A common theme that Swamiji talks about, the guru speaks at his level, the disciple will hear at their level. And often the guru speaks somewhat, how should I say, like cryptically, like it's not necessarily in literal terms. Now, what can we read into this? Well, is it the literal words that are cryptic, or, you know, when the guru is at their level? He's also saying that the guru is your soul. So your soul speaks at one level. The disciple, your mind, hopefully your mind is the disciple, not the master. That would be not a good thing. If the mind was master, you know, that's where we get all of the mess of the world. So do you listen to the subtlety of the mind, or the subtlety of the soul, or is it the mind that's kind of ruling the roost? So, you know, when you first read the book, you can read it at the level of, oh, it's about Swamiji and his external guru. It's also starting to talk about your own inner relationship between your own inner guru, and that's the deeper layer of which you can use the book as a sort of meditation upon your own self. he speaks really poetically and beautifully around the purification of the element of water and what his guru instructed him to do, to just go and be with the water, to observe it. Now you understand, for those, again, who've done some of the soul retreat, the mountain yoga, the mindfulness-based practice that we do in nature here. Not only do you go and look at the water when you investigate it, when you are with it, the qualities of that aspect of nature have an effect on you. And what is the effect of the water element? It washes the shit away. It's the juice of life. Okay, so it's connection. So Swamiji is being instructed to cleanse his awareness. It's a practice. There you go. Like, you yourself, go. Don't believe the experience that he had. Just go, oh, wow, Swamiji looked at the water for 4 days. Go and spend half an hour and look at the water. Be, as he says in many of his discourses, or many times Raya and I have heard him say, just kind of be like him. Adopt some of the practices and the childlike curiosity that he has. His guru prompts him as well not to just look at the water, but to zoom out and look at where the water comes from. And that just, I've been reading this book written by a psychiatrist and a neurologist. His name's Dr. Ian McGilchrist. And for those that have been on a retreat recently, if I've been talking about the different hemispheres of the brain and how they tend to the world in these different methods, that's where I've got that kind of knowledge from. And so when Swamiji is talking about not just looking at the water, but seeing where the water comes from, what he's actually doing is guiding you towards the right brain vision of awareness. The opposite is what happens when we zoom in and cut out all of the stuff and just focus on, cut things out from their backdrop. You're just looking at something in isolation. That's left brain. That's actually the masculine side. And that's what I would say is typically what we describe as the mind. So simply by zooming out and understanding that the water comes from a stream and that the stream is fed by rain and mountains, and for those who've done the work with the elements with us, when you start to zoom back out, you're connecting to the right brain, which is your feminine side, the broadening aspect of your awareness. That's the gateway towards your soul, okay? That's why the practice, the Himalayan meditation, is a practice of no practice. It is a broadening, a zooming out. A mantra-based meditation where you've got to do something and focus on the mantra is very left brain dominant, okay? That's not what we share. I mean, we do with other things, but, this is a process of broadening. The tree, and again, not just the tree as a beautiful object, but the tree as a cycle of growth, of surrendering, of energy. And one of the things that sort of jumped out at me was that the Swamiji talks about how the branches surrender the energy to the leaves, and the branches surrender the energy to the twigs, and the roots surrender the energy to the branches. It's just about letting oneself become a medium for the energy to move through. And what happens is that this entire tree then becomes a process of letting go of energy, and growth happens naturally. Instead of us trying to get energy to make the growth, we give energy, we allow the energy to come through, and then the system works harmoniously. He emphasizes giving, and the more you give, the more you get, and that you give not for the sake of the people that you're giving to. If you get something from tonight, that's an added benefit. If I give because there's something inside of me that has to be given. And in the process of giving and surrendering that energy, more will be given. And then I've got to surrender that energy, and then more will be given, and so on and so forth. And this is the process of growth. It's a very, very different model. Think about the place that my sharing would come from if I sat here and I I had a fixed idea in my mind of what I wanted you to receive, and I was going to be, kept up at night thinking to myself whether or not you got anything out of tonight. Like, I would lose my flow. There would be nothing coming through. I would be lost for words because I'd be so neurotically focused upon you instead of focusing on the awesomeness of what is coming through. And so that is a karma yoga attitude. It is the renunciation. We call it guru karya, the work of the guru. It's renunciation of the fruit of the action. It just is, and it comes through. Your gifts emerge from within you. They are a natural part of you. The extent to which we get out of the way, the more that comes through, the more that is there to be given. What happens if we start thinking that which is being given to us is for us? We become a hoarder, and then we start holding on to things, and we stop the flow. When we let it go and give freely, more will be given. So, when he has these sorts of experiences with a tree, he surrenders to the tree as Paramatma, and like the kind of Paramatma, so the Atman is the soul, the indwelling soul, the Jivatman. Paramatma, Para is the supreme. So it's the Paramatma is like the supreme universal consciousness. In the yogic speak, it's the yogic kind of God, although, God can invoke for those that are more theistic, like a deity or something like that. So a lot of the yoga talks more about Paramatma, the supreme soul, which is, has the qualities of creation, preservation, destruction, or Satchitananda, truth, consciousness, bliss. So when Swamiji feels nature is teaching him, he just bows down and is like, oh my God, this is God before me. This is the Almighty in this tree. And what he talks about, not in this section, but in many of his discourses, is that when you surrender fully to something, what you're actually doing is maximizing your receiving capacity, because you're lowering yourself. You're like, oh my God, the Almighty is before me, and in increasing your receiving capacity, you get filled with something, and then you must surrender. You must give that away as well, as we just shared. A nice juxtaposition that came up, thinking versus assimilating. So thinking versus assimilating, and his guru pushed him to assimilate what was being said or shared with him, not just to think about it. You think about what our culture is full of. It is full of ideas and thinking and rumination and talking and assimilation. What is assimilation? It is to take something into us. When I hit the gong has to reverberate. When I play the bowls, the sound one has to allow the reverberation to happen. And so when we read, I think this is a nice thing that he's setting us up to do as we read through the book, is not just to think about the ideas, but to assimilate them, to allow them to touch us in the depths, the quiet depths of our awareness. I am a holy soul, I am a pure soul. When we allow ourselves to feel that, to assimilate that, rather than to think about what the soul is, it's a very, very different experience. One is masculine, one is feminine. The feminine, gateway to the soul; masculine, gateway to insanity. An interesting kind of take that he had as well around the bad deeds that get done in a place, leaving an energetic imprint at that place. And then a good person goes into the bad place and becomes afflicted by those bad deeds or the energy of the place. And what he said is that not all places are suitable for meditation. And I have had this experience, and I took that as a bit of a kind of wet fish across the face. I was like, okay, I hear you. I've read this book a few times. That message hasn't kind of landed. I've meditated in some places that I maybe had the consequence that I was absorbing things that I didn't want to absorb. And so I'm taking this as a nice push to choose wisely the place at which I meditate. Now, interestingly, that's at a physical level. On an energetic level, and what he does expand on is that with the Sadguru, with a guru, that is a good place to meditate because one is in the aura of a saintly or an auspicious person. How can we take ourselves into that proximity if we are physically dislocated from Swamiji in India? Enter the subtle body picture, or whatever you have sitting on your altar, or whatever you have that you sit before, even if it is a simple candle. It is an internal state. All of this is just an external device to change the place at which your attention registers when you take yourself into a meditation. We have the benefit of some blessed paduka, blessed sandals from Swamiji. You know, that blessing, when I sit before this for meditation, as I did this morning, which was lovely, saw some of you there, it makes me feel in my own heart that Swamiji is before me. And I even just mentally imagine, okay, I'm sat before a living master. If I was sitting next to Swamiji for a private meditation session, I would sit there and go, you know what I've got to do? Nothing, because the boss is here. He's absorbed in his meditative state. I just need to sit here and feel. I can take myself, with a little bit of practice, in a bit of a contrived way, to that place simply by using the power of my awareness. My invitation for you, and perhaps where I'll finish for this week, is for you to take yourself into the proximity of whatever you find to be saintly through the power of your chitta, through your awareness. How did we achieve that though? First, through purification. And Swamiji gave us the element, the water element, so we cleanse ourselves, we wash ourselves before we go into that realm. And I'm not saying you need to have a shower before you meditate in the morning, but one needs to go in with a clean awareness to an environment, to an auspicious, sacred environment, in order to enhance the sort of the receptivity of what you can receive from your own meditation. Taking ourselves to a bad place for meditation would be potentially not having any of that sacred atmosphere and treating meditation as a mental slog. And when it is treated as a bit of a mental slog, what does it reflect back to us? Whatever we've taken it as. So my invitation for you to increase the sacredness of your own meditation as much as you can this week. Thank you for your awareness and your attention. I'll say Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. We'll sit for meditation in a second, but thank you so much. Great to see you, Lucille, Raj, Craig, Jane, Surendra. Wow, Surendra all the way from the UK. Aussie, Ashram, that must be Jaya as well. Brilliant. Harry, Sylvia, Georgie, and a random Zoom user. So beautiful to have seen you. Thank you for tuning in. Enjoy your meditation. I'm going to